Good afternoon. Welcome to week three, panel two of the FAIR Foundation virtual conference, Building a Culture of Preparedness. The theme for this week is real estate and risk. Our partners for the week are the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals and the Missouri Realtors. The panel this afternoon is water pollution impacts on real estate, tourism, and risk management. Our distinguished moderator is a fantastic advocate for all things clean energy and environmental. She has a wealth of knowledge that every time I have a conversation with her, I'm amazed by. She is the Florida Director for the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, was recently named to the top 500 most distinguished Florida trend business leaders in the state of Florida. I give you Susan Glickman.
Great. Thank you so much, Jay. We really appreciate it. And we're going to have an interesting conversation, a very sort of solution-based dialogue about water pollution and impacts on real estate, tourism, and risk management, which is a very real issue for us, particularly in the state of Florida. So we have a very distinguished panel here today. And we're going to start off with Jeff Berardelli, who is a meteorologist and a climate contributor with CBS News, and he spent from 2007 to 2018 working as a TV meteorologist in South Florida and has really devoted his life to the climate issue. We're going to also hear from Pachi Pastor, who's the founder and the CEO of Celebration of the Sea Foundation, and he is a entrepreneur and executive, and he's done events and created numerous organizations and groundbreaking sort of entertainment and bringing all of those forces to solutions to protect our oceans and waters. Then we're going to hear also from the mayor of Port St. Lucie, Mayor Gregory Oravec, who is sort of a renaissance man, so a small business owner, and he's got redevelopment experience as well as being a city manager and assistant city manager. So for the last 23 years working in and around government, and we're going to talk about some innovative things happening in his community, as well as Donaldson, who's with us from Martin County. He's the deputy county administrator, and he has spent a lot of years in local government, and again, figuring out how to solve problems. And so I will say, though, our first speaker, Jeff, will probably be more setting the stage and letting us know a little bit about the impacts of climate change and extreme weather that we're, so his presentation may not be as upbeat as some of the solutions we're going to hear about after Jeff goes, but we're going to let Jeff set the stage first, and then we're going to hear from the mayor, and then Pachi, and then Donaldson. So go ahead, and I'll just hand it over to you, Jeff.
All right, I appreciate it, and hello everybody. I'm glad to be here. So a little bit of background about me. So I worked in Florida the majority of my adult life. I worked in Tampa as a meteorologist from, let me try to think about this, 97 to 2003. Then I came back to New York City. I'm from New York for 4 years. Then I moved back down to Florida. I worked in both Miami and West Palm Beach for about 10, 12 years. And now I'm back in New York City working for CBS News as both a meteorologist and also a climate specialist. Can't say that climate was my specialty my whole career. I've always been interested in it. But over the past several years, I've kind of transitioned into this role because I view this as one of the biggest threats that we face as a human species. And I see the data, you know, as a meteorologist who looks at maps every single day. I see the evidence right before my very eyes, and I'm thinking, my God, I really have to communicate this to people. They don't really understand how fast we're changing the world. That's a concern, especially in the Arctic, and you know, it just doesn't stay there. What happens in the Arctic doesn't stay there, unfortunately, and we're already starting to see that with sea level rise. You know, both in the Antarctic and up towards Greenland. You know, we have melting that's accelerating at paces that we haven't seen in a very, very long time, thousands of years. So, you know, I owned a condo on Belle Isle in Miami Beach along the Venetian Causeway, which may very well be the most vulnerable place, one of the most vulnerable places in Florida to sea level rise, with maybe the exception of the Keys. And I was genuinely concerned for years about what that would mean in my property value, what that would mean in terms of getting insurance for both the building that I lived in, but for property owners that have single family homes also, especially near the water. So, I did sell my condo a couple of years ago. I did not want to. I love that place. I still love that place. But the reality is that at some point, I believe, and you guys are more experts than I am, there's going to be some impact to both the insurance market and the mortgage market as well. So, the good news in the short term, at least, is that the sea level rise that we're expecting is likely going to be a foot or less by 2050, unless something catastrophic happens, like one of the sections of an ice sheet breaks off. We don't know when that's going to happen. We don't think it's going to be in the next couple of decades, but it could be several decades in the future. So assuming that we stay on this line of sea level rise, we think maybe a foot at most by 2050, maybe a little less. I'm just giving you I'm basing my opinion on the science that I've seen. There are going to be differing opinions. There's some science that says it'll be more than that. Some science that says it'll be less. But generally speaking, from all the science that we have, that's what we see. And then, unfortunately, by 2100, it just all of a sudden exponentially starts to increase. And now all of a sudden, middle of the road estimates are 2 to 3 feet, but that's even on the low end. Some people will tell you it's more like 6 feet or more. We don't know for sure. This is, I would say, the most challenging thing that I communicate as a communicator in climate change is sea level rise, because we're so uncertain as to how much it's going to be, because so much of it depends upon the stability of ice sheets. So anyway, I think I kind of said my piece. If there's anything beyond that you want me to touch on, Susan, please let me know. But certainly I certainly can if I need to.
So, and after everybody just has their kind of opening remarks from their perspective, then we're going to continue in some discussion, and then the last 10 minutes or so will be reserved for audience questions and answers. So next I'd like to hear from the mayor of Port St. Lucie, who was elected in 2014 and re-elected in 2018. And in Port St. Lucie, they've had a successful 10-year zero interest loan program for dealing with one big problem that we have, which is the septic tank problem and septic to sewer. So as you know, the title of the panel is Water Pollution and Impacts on Real Estate and Tourism and Risk Management. So one problem that we've seen in the state of Florida has been blue-green algae and red tide. And both of those two problems, while we've historically had them in Florida for decades and centuries, and continue even back when I was in high school. I grew up in the Tampa Bay area. So, and we know that nutrient pollution is the primary driver, and you have nutrient pollution from ag runoff as well as from septic tanks. But to your point about climate change, Jeff, the warmer, wetter weather, the increased precipitation, the increased heat, it makes that problem worse. And so we have seen that hurting tourism in the state of Florida. So these are very important problems that we have, and we're looking for solutions. So Mayor, I'm going to turn it over to you on that note and talk about some of the successful things you're doing in Port St. Lucie.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you for moderating, and thank you to FAIR for having us all. It's really an honor as a native Floridian. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see if this works. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, great. So, Susan, you're going to have to give me the hook, because never give an elected official a microphone and an audience, all right? So feel free to give me the hard hook at 3 to 5 minutes, whatever it is. But it's really hard to have this conversation without setting some of the big picture parameters. And of course, we're talking about water pollution. And we live on a blue planet. And it's 71% water, only about 3% of it's fresh. And I want to take you back to your 8th grade, or maybe if you were in college and you went to the University of Miami and studied marine environmental systems like I did, you studied the water cycle, and you might remember that from college, high school, or 8th grade about how it's all interconnected. So what Jeff said is huge, because what happens in one place doesn't stay there, because the water I'm drinking out of my Guy Harvey themed cup right now, who knows, these molecules could have been in a dinosaur once upon a time. I mean, that's how the cycle works. And so it's interconnected, and unfortunately pollution is interconnected. So we know in Florida that a power plant that's coal-fired belching out smoke in the Midwest might put mercury in the atmosphere that floats and makes its way due to atmospheric winds down to Florida, comes down in precipitation, rains, and creates such a concentration that's accumulated through little organisms, through bioaccumulation. And then all of a sudden it's in snapper and snook. And Don and I, the chairman of the fine commission and the fine Martin County engineer, we can't even eat as much snapper as we want because it's too full of mercury. We got to go look at a table from the state of Florida that says, oh, we can only have 2 fillets a week. That's how interconnected it is. So just again, going back to 8th grade, sources of water pollution. This will be part of the presentation if you want to find it. But you can just see how everything's interconnected. And of course, septic tanks are on there. Why is water pollution bad? It kills people. Killing people is bad. Causes illnesses, even if it doesn't kill you. Imperils the food supply. We like to eat, right? Well, what about if our food poisons us? That's obviously bad. Destroys ecosystems. And then really tying into today, harms the economy, especially water-based businesses, tourism, and real estate. And hey, if you like money, you got to spend a lot of it to try to fix water pollution. So that's bad in itself. It's really bad if you're in Florida, because the only place that has more water surrounding them is an island. We're a peninsula. We got water everywhere. We got the Gulf. We got the Atlantic. We're right off the Caribbean. Water is everywhere. And of course, we have plenty of fresh water in the state. And how does our state try to sell itself? You know, we love Florida for a lot of different reasons, but most of us probably have something common in the water. Here's how the St. Lucie County Tourism Development Council tries to sell our community. Water is in every one of those photos. So polluting, the thing that makes your community valuable and desirable, is bad. Even at Met Stadium, where we have spring training and we can go when there's not COVID, you drink water, right? So there's water everywhere. There's a Club Med in Port St. Lucie, the only Club Med in the continental US, just right upriver from my buddy Don there in Martin County. And here's a beautiful picture of our St. Lucie River. Historically, it's been one of the most biodiverse estuaries in the United States, and it connects to pretty much a similarly diverse estuary in the Indian River Lagoon. And why Port St. Lucie is, I think, an interesting case study is because once upon a time we were perfect Florida wilderness, and in the late 50s, early 60s, a big developer out of New York, Jeff out of New York, came down, clear-cut 80 square miles of Florida wilderness and punched in quarter-acre lots and said, hey, for $10 down, $10 a month, you too can live in sunny Florida. They set up sand beach volleyball in Times Square, had beach bunnies out there selling the Florida dream. And the funny thing happened is people started buying them. And so they punched in because of profit motive, right? Because of money. They punched in the absolute cheapest infrastructure possible. They did soil cement roads. They didn't build sidewalks or street lights. And of course, they used septic tanks. You know, they had very limited centralized sewer. So a lot of septic tanks here and wells for water. So not a municipal water system either. They built golf courses. They clear cut. They filled the wetlands that would have buffered stormwater sheet flow before it went into the river. And the city started out small. We're incorporated in 61. There were only 330 people here in 1970. But fast forward today, we're over 200,000. We're the 7th most populous city and the 3rd most populous state. So we've really grown. And of course, that puts pressure on your infrastructure and your natural resources. GDC eventually went bankrupt. They turned over their water and wastewater utility to the county. So everybody's got some newspaper headlines in 1970. Something terrible happened in, 1990. In 1992, something terrible happened, and that is the tap went dry. So Don knows and others know that when you're in the municipal business, your city or county, and your job is to provide clean drinking water, you can't have the water not work, right? The water's got to always work, toilets got to always flush. We actually ran out of water here in the city of Port St. Lucie in 1992. That caused the community conversation that led to the city of Port St. Lucie taking from the county that utility, and we began one of the largest retrofit projects ever attempted in the country. And we punched in infrastructure overall what is now 120 square miles. And a big part of that was saying, you know what, it's probably not a good idea to have a 1/4 acre lot where you have a well that you get your drinking water from on one side, and then on the other, you're pumping in your wastewater. And wastewater is a really nice word, right, for what it is. And another scientific type of word is effluent. But you are putting your waste pretty close to the straw where you're sucking your water out. Not a great thing. We changed that. Of course, here's one of the rubbing points, Susan, that I'm sure that you're going to get to. Maybe you're going to draw out, but everyone should know. Oh, geez, we all want clean water. We all like the environment. We want it to be clean. Why don't we do anything about it? It's freaking expensive. And then we're not very good as a species as in factoring in what we call negative externalities and the long-term costs. We prefer more immediate gratification and cost avoidance than the long-term benefits of kind of doing it right. And we even experienced that here. So we actually worked with the state at the time so that you did not have to bear the expense of going from septic to sewer until your septic tank actually failed. All right, and that was an accommodation that enabled this to go forward, because now this was before my time. I was still probably at the University of Miami when this went down. When the city noticed, all the residents, that we were going to do this program and there was going to be a special assessment on their property to pay for the mainline infrastructure, there were bomb threats, there were pitchforks, there were torches, there were tents in the city hall parking lot, there were 3 a.m. meetings, there was, you're going to get voted out of office. There were a lot of unhappy residents. Residents said, well, I'm just going to turn my property in. I don't want to pay the assessment. So short term, there was a lot of pain, a lot of political pain. There was people having to accommodate this in their budget. But long term, this was a fundamental turning point that allowed the city to go from something more than just a bedroom community consisting of 80,000 1/4 acre lots to the full service, dynamic, vibrant city that's been recognized by U.S. News and World Report as one of the best places to live in the United States. So this was a huge moment. And in addition to that accommodation that you didn't have to hook up, the real big one was a 10-year interest-free loan. So in order to facilitate this program, we said that's all you have to do is make the payments. There's going to be no interest. We're going to spread it over 10 years because we want this to be manageable. And it's been hugely successful. So obviously all new homes go on to sewer. So we have the avoidance. And then in addition to that, here's how big the city is. We divided it up into chunks. We punched in mainline infrastructure, and then the residents had to hook up if it was a new construction or if they had a failure. And then here's the number of conversions we're doing a year. Then I know I'm already out of time. So let me just say that with the conversion program, we want it to go faster. And so how can we make it go faster? Should we target certain areas? We hooked up with Dr. LaPointe, Brian LaPointe, an expert in the field from FAU Harbor Branch. And we actually studied our river and outfalls and where we're having issues with fecal coliform. And if you know, fecal coliform is what it sounds like. It's from the effluent again, and somehow it's getting into the St. Lucie River. And we were trying to look for areas where there might be high concentration and to try to identify the sources of those high concentration. And we found a couple of neighborhoods where there's spikes. And Dr. LaPointe's team, they use markers like sucralose that's coming from things like Diet Coke, because cows and birds aren't drinking Diet Coke. So if there's sucralose in the sample, you know it's from man. We found a couple of neighborhoods and we targeted those. And in addition to having the no interest over 10 years that we have for everyone, we're actually offering them a 50% reduction. So we're using money from our utility to actually incentivize that. And we've had very good traction even during the pandemic, and we're going to continue to use science to kind of drive our decision making because there's just not enough money. And you know, one of the things we were talking about beforehand, I'm sure is going to come out, is partnerships and how valuable they are. We enjoy a partnership with Don, and he's part of a larger organization that's tremendous on the resource side and the Florida Inland Navigation District. But here in Florida, we can't have this conversation without talking about Saltwater Water Management District and the Department of Environmental Protection. They're just huge partners. They've partnered in all the good water quality stuff that we've done. And Susan, I'm sorry, and to the panel, I'm leaving a lot of good stuff on the table.
Well, we'll get into some more of that during questions.
Yeah, we've done Eastern Watershed Improvement Project. We're doing a water farm of 2,000 acres in the city of Port St. Lucie that's on par with some of the projects in the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. So we're doing big things in PSL, and it's a real pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, it really just shows how important leadership is, and our planet moving forward is going to require a lot of strong leadership, and so I want to acknowledge that. So next we're going to hear from Pachi, who is going to talk a little bit about his work protecting oceans, and you've got such a real diverse variety of experiences. So take it away and tell us where you're at on water pollution and what's going on.
Great, thank you, Susan. We're huge fans of Jay and FAIR, and thrilled to be here today. Can you guys see the screen okay?
I did for a minute, but then it just went dark. Oh, there you are. You're back.
Okay, let me, we're sharing okay?
Yes.
All right, let me, there we go. Okay. How's that? We good?
You're good.
Yeah, great. So again, huge fans. Thanks so much for having us today. And Mayor, like you, we're all water people here. We're all drawn to Florida for the same reasons. Quick background, I come from a little different angle. I was a scientific diver with NOAA, 7 years Sony's underwater cameraman, had a show on CBS, and saw the power of using media to engage audiences and share. You know, as somebody who's been diving in Florida for over 35 years, I've seen the degradation of the reefs and the habitat here. It's pretty alarming and scary. And the good news is where I think we can all focus this is hopeful, actionable messages, especially for a tourism and real estate-based economy. We really need to do that. So the brand equity for Florida, what we can do together. In another life too, I was a Cousteau Society ambassador for kids. And my passion now is to try to get these coastal communities, as we start to raise our students, to thinking about how we can rethink the problem-solving, critical thinking of coastal communities as we redesign and engage them. So the big push for one of three foundations that I founded and run, Celebration Sea Foundation, that I wasn't sure which hat Jay wanted me to talk about today, but the big thing for us is to engage people, to educate them, and really inspire them that there's some amazing things that can be done. And wouldn't it be cool, and I think it is cool, that Florida can lead the way as a showcase for the world in how to get this right. And we don't have much of a choice because we're really on the front lines of the issue. So the focus of what we're doing every day is trying to get kids, specifically females and minorities, involved in these different types of career paths, looking at Florida as a place for this engagement, a lot of interesting scholarshiping that we're doing with the Navy, with scholarships, scuba programs we've set up. Doing a lot of work with FIU, with NOVA, with Go FAU, and University of Miami Erasmus. We have such amazing academic institutions here, so we partner with many of them. We're in a major partnership right now. Mayor, I heard you talking about Guy Harvey, and I'm thrilled to be working directly every day with Dr. Guy Harvey and his team, and the governor on a huge project with Florida Virtual Schools. What people typically call STEM, with Guy Harvey and throwing the arts in there, which is really interesting, kind of rethinking, critical thinking and problem solving. In the old days of Da Vinci, when it was painting and science and those two things came together, it's kind of cool to think about that. I take the liberty to throw an R in there too, especially in Florida, and I call it STREAM, because I think we got to have resiliency at the core of everything we talk about with our families and get that conversation back to the dinner table. The kids can bring that concept back. And so one of the things that we're really excited about working with Dr. Harvey and NOVA and the Florida Department of Education, Florida Virtual Schools, is we're launching a massive program, Broward County is where we're piloting it right now. Discovery Education is our partner, which is the largest educational platform in the world. It's 50 million kids, 90 countries, and 5 million teachers around the world. And Florida is where we're piloting it, and we're launching it in Broward County right now. So we're super excited about this. You'll hear about it. We're about to do the big reveal over the next couple months. Broward Workshop has been a wonderful partner. Rob Cornierans, who's the chair of the Resiliency Committee, is the one that put us all together. Jeff Watts there, and Marcel, who are the chairs of the Education Committee for the Broward Workshop. We're just so grateful all these leaders are coming together to lead the charge. So one of the things that attracted me, I'm a Connecticut boy originally, but to Florida, was the beautiful diversity we have. And when we talk with FAIR about water and insurance and thinking forward, you know, we really should host and own this topic, because the diversity in South Florida and Florida in general, we have this spectacular diversity of marine ecosystems. So the Everglades, the Gulf Streams, world famous beaches, coral reefs, Biscayne Bay, the mangroves, the wetlands, it's all in one place. And that's why the world comes here. I mean, we have such an amazing story to tell. With the mayor and all these other great people, my focus has typically been in the South. I came originally to the Keys, worked very closely with the mayors and commissioners here in Monroe County. I'm actually in my Mercedes broadcast facility. You can see the scuba gear. We're going live here and talking about virtual field trips because of COVID for kids, bringing the Keys and the reefs right into kids in the schools. I was honored to spend one day. We had this amazing meeting. I was introduced to Al Gore, former Vice President Gore, and he gave me this slide and gave me permission to use it from his movie. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Inconvenient Truth. It's really interesting that in Florida, of all the cities in the world, the key part of this story with assets at risk in terms of density is right here in our backyard where I'm from, in Miami. So I was honored at the time when Mayor Philip Levine was the mayor. The mayor brought me in to be the chief marketing officer for the 100th anniversary of South Beach. And I know that Jeff was speaking about having a condo there. What we were talking about is how do we change from a tourism-based economy and a real estate-based economy? How do we change and reframe this story? Because the media is not going to discontinue what they're doing right now, which is their job, which is basically telling people that there's something going on here. It's enormously challenging. It's not going to go away. And for a tourism and a real estate-based economy, this is something we're all critically needing to take seriously, and most importantly, work together to reframe it in something actionable and hopeful. So one of the things that I've always tried to do with large-scale events that I produce a lot of is reframe these discussions. So with the mayor, we took our 100th anniversary for Miami Beach, which I was honored to be the chief marketing officer for that project. And we took this opportunity when we activated the entire city, and we had Bocelli and Barry Gibb and Gloria Estefan. That was kind of the fun side of the party, but we used it as a platform for a resiliency message. So the next day, I actually produced the first of a series of these things called the Resiliency Summit. And we brought all the asset holders, the elected officials, we brought the scientists in, we had a variety of the presidents from all the universities. And this was an opportunity to get everyone talking together. So they were talking with each other as opposed to talking at each other. Al Roker hosted it because we needed the media was critical. Jeff, you guys are the ones getting the voice out there and telling the stories. You guys go media. The mayor hosted it. We had Jimmy, the city manager. We had wonderful sponsors like Royal Caribbean, but it was all about a conversation about how we can all work together. That led to kind of a template that I've been using. Then with the Chamber of Commerce, I started to produce more of these. Again, all the asset holders, the scientists, things that were actionable. What can we do? A lot of talk, a lot of meetings, a lot of the business leaders, which you elected officials, because it's such a difficult subject. I would highly encourage you get these business leaders in there. They're all about getting stuff done. You know, they don't have the stomach for, 12-day conferences and a lot of talk. They want to see rubber hit the road. So a lot of our opportunities with these large scale events I produce, you may know the Riptide Festival with Intercom. We're honored to be the official charity. It's 30,000 people a weekend. So we talk about resiliency and habitat and how we can all work together. This is a big tourism driver for us, signature event. Pre-COVID, with Jay was going to be one of our speakers and FAIR was going to be one of our partners. I was producing the International Resiliency Conference. We had Richard Branson was going to speak. So these are the kind of events we want to bring world leaders together, bring everyone to Florida, have actionable, hopeful solutions, and talk about things that we can all do together. So jumping through that hoop, in 2005, I came at the time of the hurricanes. That was a 3-hurricane year. Steve Tyler was kind enough to come down. We did a big event in the Keys with DMC and Chuck Berry. And that whole event was about trying to get people aware of the fact that good things can happen out of bad things, being hurricanes. Made Rolling Stone as one of the stories. And then in 2017, I was asked to get involved again. This one was pretty heavy. Irma, the phones rang. I decided to help, and we set up a thing called Keys Strong. And what we realized is this conversation is not going to go away. And Florida really needs to take a leading role in the ability to understand how to be preactive rather than reactive. This was a 3-story house, by the way, that was decimated by about 11 feet of storm surge. And you'll see when it's done panning, the house next to it that was built by different standards and different codes is unaffected. And to your point, Mayor, about the effect of creating great planning, better architecture, bringing best practices to these communities. So working with the mayors and all of that, we set up a thing called Keys Strong. We brought down the media, we engaged the media. We go through this quickly. But the idea was to bring all the organizations working collectively together. We had mayors and congressmen here. The idea was bringing the private sector to work with the government and the elected officials, and this is something we're super proud of. That led to a Broward County initiative with a partnership that I have with Joe Farrell, who's the owner of Resolve Marine Group, one of the largest marine salvage companies in the world. You're probably familiar with the building on 17th Street. What we set up was a foundation that Joe's passionate about the oceans, and back to Broward Workshop. We were very involved and called by the Bahamian government. It took 22 trips, same old lesson, where the Bahamas, kind of the front doorstep of the conversation today, 32 foot of storm surge during Dorian, which is the same lesson over and over. They're going to keep coming. Ferocity and frequency. You probably saw this on the news. We helped evacuate 1,400 people from Grand Bahama. These are things with media partners. Again, Jeff, you guys helping get the word out, raised a lot of money, a lot of help, a lot of warehousing. These are the kind of reactive. If we're not proactive, you have to be reactive. So a lot of the impact of some of the work that we're doing here with the Bahamian government, learning what we've learned in Florida and trying to repurpose it with the Prime Minister and other people in other places. This is something that Florida can be proud of, and Go Miami Dolphins and Steve Ross, who helped us out, one of our major sponsors. You know, Florida is about people who care. It's all about getting stuff done. Very proud of the kind of work that we do as Floridians, and I'm happy when I can to help serve as a catalyst to try to bring these great people together, and just so honored to be part of these great groups. So in closing, and thanks for listening to all that, the FEMA number, if you look at this slide, which says it all, if we can think about being proactive rather than reactive, and I'm very proud and happy of what we've done in the Keys with Keys Strong and what we've done in the Bahamas with Mission Resolve, but that's the reactive side. And this stuff is not going to slow down. So if you look at what I'd love to see happen is that Florida become a showcase for the world and how to get it right, rethinking coastal communities, and do them in Florida. So let's make it a priority, elevate a level of relevance and urgency, try to define what success would look like with KPIs. And then the big thing that the business leaders need from our elected officials and the community to come together on it is, what are our goals and objectives, rather than all these meetings, which I'm part of these committees and I sit there for hours of these discussions. What are we trying to do? What's the budget and the timeline? So if we had to privatize it, the P3, public-private sector coming together and doing great stuff, what are we going to do as a real kind of actionable solution there? And then how are we going to actually implement those funds to make great things happen? So in closing, and thank you for listening, it's to me all about innovation and what we can do as a community in Florida. So God bless. Pleasure to be here. Hope I didn't go over time. I got the hook, and let's rock and roll.
No, you're good. You were, reminding us why we're having this discussion, because these issues, be it the water quality issues or climate change more broadly, really impacts all the pillars of Florida's economy: tourism, real estate, agriculture, and our ports, and on and on. So let's flip up to Martin County, from Monroe County to Martin County, and Don Donaldson's going to talk about an innovative program that the county is developing with the Solar and Energy Loan Fund self.
Great, thank you very much. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Start broadcast. So yeah, I appreciate the mayor and Pashi's at least inclusion of why we're here, because as an engineer, often, one, we don't include enough slides of people and also some of the background of what it is we're trying to achieve. So I'll jump right into it. Martin County, here we're on the east coast of Florida, just below St. Lucie County and the city of Port St. Lucie, with Mayor just talked about. And we're relatively population-wise small. We're about the population, about the size of the city of Port St. Lucie, maybe a little smaller, about 160,000 people. And in terms of the big picture, the St. Lucie Estuary, which the mayor talked about, is an impaired water body. It has a total maximum daily load. We just had a recent revision to our Basin Management Action Plan, or the BMAP. Barton County's on the bigger side of things. We support Everglades restoration. Locally, we did tax ourselves some years ago and provided over $27 million to help the Water Management District acquire funds for the C44 project, which is under construction right now. That'll provide, it's a 3,400 acre reservoir with a 6,300 acre STA and a pump station capable of 1,100 CFS. So a significant project in our region. Also, we have our own local stormwater retrofits, elevation, but today I'm going to focus on septic to sewer. And one of the reasons, of course, here is the C44 with some microcystin algae that's on its way to the locks that comes out of Lake Okeechobee, as you just mentioned earlier. During summertime, we're getting more frequent algae outbreaks, and this comes usually only as a result of discharges from the lake. We also have high tide flooding. This is not from a rain event. This is some streets next to the estuary. We see that when the elevations are above, at or above elevation 2 NAVD, we see this type of flooding routinely. And we've also noticed that recently, that the last few years, we're seeing, when we have any type of storm, that the predicted tide elevation is often as much as a foot off. So we're seeing, including right now, elevations between 1/2 and 1 foot above the predicted tide elevation. I know the use of king tides is sometimes not conveyed, but we have essentially a storm surge on top of the tide. And of course, this time of year, we get our highest tides of the year. Some examples of what we are doing, though, in addition to, this is a stormwater treatment area that's in Phipps Park. At the top right of the screen is where the C44 or Okeechobee waterway enters the St. Lucie Estuary, where we get the releases from both our local basin out west and the Lake Okeechobee when it is releasing. And just as an example, this project we constructed for over $4 million to treat about 1,900 acres of upland properties that were old subdivision that did not have any stormwater treatment to address and do it in a way that is provides some recreational amenities. We got trails and things, and at a nice park facility there. So septic to sewer, what are we doing there? Our county approved about a year and a half ago a goal of connecting 10,000 tanks in 10 years. After numerous discussions, the goal is to keep it at under 12,000 per home. And so the county has broken up the septic to sewer program into 2 types of projects: large projects, which are vacuum sewer constructed. And I won't go into all the details, but essentially a vacuum system is similar to a traditional system where everybody gets a system that doesn't require electricity. It's a central vacuum station takes care of that. It's certainly in times of power outages, we have one backup generator that can serve it. So it has some advantages to that. However, in order for it to be economical, you need at least 300 homes. Otherwise, the cost per home is just too excessive. And so then when you're looking at other smaller projects, fewer than 300 homes, and obviously it's awesome. typically you have a street of maybe, 25 homes or 50 homes, neighborhood. And how to address those, we're using a grinder system. And that's principally what we're going to talk about here. And so one of the things we did in preparation for all of this is we did a study looking at all of our areas where these 10,000 tanks are around the St. Lucie Estuary, and prioritized them based upon depth of water table, proximity to the water, those types of things, as just, to try to tier the projects and put some priority to our focus, our neighborhoods, similar to what Mayor Oravec talked about in terms of looking at the data of where we're seeing pollution, et cetera. So in order to achieve this, one of the things you need to do a grinder station is you need a force main to be installed. And that costs money. It costs anywhere from, $2,000 to $4,000 per property typically. And so what we've also did after the Great Recession, like so many communities, we had quite a backlog of road resurfacing, drainage, and other things that we had neglected for a long time. And so we instituted a program using franchise fees, which the county had not used. And franchise fees, we're talking about in our area, Florida Power and Light. And so by us agreeing not to start a public utility, which we had no interest in doing for a period of over 30 years, then there's a franchise fee that can be charged. So essentially everybody's electric bill has an additional fee that ultimately generates in Martin County for the unincorporated area about $10 million a year. So we were putting that into our street restoration program. And we also included, when we passed an ordinance on how to spend that funds, included a provision for water quality and septic to sewer conversion. So we're spending about $3 to $4 million a year out of that. A couple of million goes towards the vacuum system, where we need grants and other things to fulfill that. And then finally, we use another portion to help Public Works and utilities put in these force mains. So we install the backbone system and the main, and that there's no cost to the residents when we put that in. Typical diagram of what it looks like. You have the house, you have a grinder station, which is shown in the center. Then there's a valve box, and ultimately it connects to that little black circle on the left, which is the county's force main, which, as I stated before, is anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 generally per property once to install it. Oftentimes we'll directionally drill it, or when we're doing these neighborhood restorations, if we have it to open it up to do stormwater repairs, we'll do it at the same time. So we came up with this Connect to Connect program. The conversion fees are stated there, that so if you connect within the first year and you just want to write a check, it's $8,000. Now, and then we just, this next Tuesday, we're planning to approve this with our Solar Energy Loan Fund, which is to charge $85 per month on your utility bill. And we will then hook it up and take care of all of the connection for the property owner. All they have to do is agree to it. And so to a little more of the details on that is, so the key components for us in this agreement with Self, which is a separate entity who's headquartered in St. Lucie County. They will provide the loan. It is an unsecured loan, so it's not being attached to your property. If there is a risk of default, which we don't think there will be many, but nonetheless, Self they are the risk of default. But so what does the county do? Well, we manage the installation. So, I try to think of it in terms of like my mother, who's turning 91 this year, or perhaps my sister, who's challenged with dealing with contractors or others, that if you had to take care of hiring a contractor to install the tank or try to do things like that, to adjust your electrical panel, through this program, we do all of that. So there is an agreement the property owner signs, and for that $8,000, we abandon the septic tank, we install the grinder system, etc. And for this program, all they have to do is sign up and agree that we put the $85 a month on their utility bill. And so how does that work? The county provides $1,000 and Self provides the $7,000 loan. And part of that is related to, they're securing the funds. We were already developed a program preceding this to try to encourage people to hook up in the first year. And nonetheless, that's the program that they were able to get their lenders to agree to, that provides the least amount of interest that they can charge, and provides us, again, that combination of low shared risk, I suppose, with the public-private partnership. So the general, here's an example of a neighborhood restoration. Our goal is, when we're done, that in these neighborhoods, not only do they have an opportunity to connect to sewer, but we also are doing stormwater improvements, like putting in baffle boxes. We're examining where we can elevate roads, et cetera, and to complete the project. And what you see is the image of a typical construction project that's going on in one of our neighborhoods. The upper right, unfortunately, is another example of microcystin algae when it is out of control in our estuary, which we don't want to see. And of course, the image on the left is what we want to see, which is a healthy environment without fecal coliform or high nitrogen or phosphorus components. So with that,
Great, Don. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead. I had a question for you, Don, and then we'll do sort of a round of questions or just discussion, and then we'll move over into audience questions. But since what your presentation is fresh, I wanted to tell a little more about the Solar Energy Loan Fund and sort of what you see in this program, or the challenges of really meeting your goal. I'm full disclosure, I'm on the board of SELF, and want people to know that they do offer loans, particularly in LMI, low to moderate income, census tracts, for all kinds of energy efficiency and solar and roofs and air conditioning, new air conditioners for people who often can't get a good rate for that. But so that was my commercial, but I just wanted to pop it back to you, what you see your challenge to meet your goals.
Well, I think some of our challenges are, just general, our economy. Obviously, when things are going well and people can afford to do these, $85 a month is not a lot of money. So I think, a challenge for us, obviously, in the uncertainty with COVID right now is, in all of us experiencing the Great Recession and other. If you lived in Florida all your life, like myself, we seem to go through recessions repeatedly of some kind of crash or another that disrupts our progress to something that we're trying to achieve. But nonetheless, that is a key. But I think the other is just right now, it's sort of keeping up with the demand. I think there's a lot of interest right now from a lot of these property owners in converting their septic system. A lot of them are frustrated that, especially in these lower communities, the lower elevation, meaning that they're tired of pumping out their septic system, and writing a check for $12,000 or the actual cost of $15,000 to $20,000 in some cases is just too much for them. They can't get access to the loan. And I think just for the audience sake, SELF and what we've been doing in Martin County with them is, we have PACE providers, and I know your audience is familiar with that program, but PACE, you have to have equity in your home, and you have to have the ability to pay. And what happens if you're either at the edge of your mortgage and you don't, or you're upside down, you often can't get access. PACE simply won't work. SELF was a means for us, and that's why we contracted with them to do one of two things. One, to provide those types of loans to our folks who can't get access to that type of capital, or maybe not have quite the credit history to get a line of credit or any other means that many of us may have the ability to get. And the other thing was to we have some additional requirements on our PACE providers, and being a fairly conservative community, adding more staff is not something we do. We hired them to kind of oversee and monitor our PACE providers to make sure that they were delivering the services that that we're allowing them to do in our community, and which they have been, which is very good. So so this program with us for the it has been a really great opportunity again to allow people with one, they don't it's an unsecured loan, so they don't have to, it's not going to go against their mortgage, and they just have to demonstrate really a modicum ability to pay through and it just goes on their bill, and it allows us to we had tried to do a program where we offered $200,000 in our budget to allow people to hook up at no interest at $80 a year. The problem is that we could only serve maybe 20 homes or less in a year. With the SELF program, we can do 200. And I think with some other grants and things that, you know, it'll be really up to, you know, how SELF can gain access to or capital. I could easily see us doing the, you know, 200 to 400 homes a year, which over this 10-year goal could be upwards of 4,000, you know, homes out of our goal.
Well, there are thousands and thousands of homes
Yes.
across Florida that have this same need. It's going to be a huge problem. I do believe that in order to finance through the property assessed clean energy or PACE, it would require change in law. So that I
Yes.
believe itself probably offered you some flexibility there. Patchy, I just wanted you just to speak to a minute. You do a lot of work with the business community and how important that is. It may be that we need to hook everybody up here so you can help with your education programs for why people need to, you know, change out their septic tanks, because people don't always know that. Not everybody is starting with the same level of understanding. But Patchy, if you could just speak to some of the successes that you've had of bringing the business community along to really move big projects.
Yeah, so thank you. Where I've, at least from my perspective, and I got to compliment the mayor and anybody in elective office, from Broward's perspective, an example, you saw on 17th Street, you know, Joe has 3 of those big buildings, those glass buildings. When we were in Miami and the reporters during king tides are reporting up to their knees of their waist, they're not sitting there in seawater. And so to Don's point and others, this is a super complicated issue. That's septic. And, you know, you got 50, I don't know what the numbers are, Don, in Miami, but it's a lot of people, and it's a complicated problem, financially, economically. The urban densities that we're looking at, people are attracted to the water. They're not going to go away. And by virtue of being coastal communities, that's what drives the real estate value up, and tourism. So what we thought would be interesting, and I'll just, again, be candid with you, the people that I think will make a remarkable difference here, if the business community gets involved and supports great people like the mayor and other elected officials, these poor electeds are inheriting problems. In Broward, it's 70-year-old infrastructure with sewage coming into people's homes that has got people a little bit upset. So you're either going to raise taxes. Nobody wants that as an elected official, right, Mayor? That's one of the problems. What are you going to do? Or the other side of it is you got to engage the business community, which is, you know, hopefully like the port for us or the airport, you've got the ability to P3 these things, which would be super cool if we could talk about it as an opportunity. So when I've done these events, we try to reframe the whole conversation. This is a huge business opportunity. We don't have a choice. You have to rebuild these communities, you like it or not. And the one thing that business is going to do, it's going to move at the speed of business. They're not going to sit there for 10 days, and they like to know, what's the problem? What do you need from me? And how can I get involved? And they're going to bottom line it. So the beauty of accelerating this conversation, and honestly, after years of sitting at this table, and I'm guilty myself because I produce these events, is we all need to see some action, rubber hitting the road, big machinery, big loans. You got to see some money moving around. But these poor elected officials are either getting screamed at by residents who don't want to change. They want their neighborhoods and their beaches to stay the same. They don't want the developers to come in that typically provide the tax base by virtue of that insertion of great income and vision and rebuilding some of these pretty antiquated structures, which then creates a better tourism experience, which we need to compete with other points in the world. So it's super complicated, but the short version of that is if we've done anything that I've learned through these things, if you can't do one without the other. The academic pace is pretty slow, but you can't do it without the smart academics with the solutions and the way they think it's problem solving and super cool. The business community has to figure out how to do it quick and how to finance it and get it done. and everybody has to support the elected officials. They're the ones usually getting yelled at saying, Houston, we got a problem, go fix this. And these poor guys are either going to term out and try to survive getting screamed at for the time they've been elected, or they're looking at some pretty ominous budgets, so they got to figure out a creative way to make a multi-billion-dollar fix of an old problem. So I hope that provides a reference.
No, that's perfect. And Mayor, I've got a quick question for you, and then Jeff, you'll be up next, and then we'll go to the audience questions. But Mayor, you said something earlier about using data and using science to make decision making. And I just wanted you to speak to that, because that really seems to be a big theme now, whether we're talking about climate or our responses to COVID-19. So how do you as a mayor, just allow yourself to be guided by good science and good data?
Well, it helps that I have a science background and I actually studied these topics at the University of Miami. So, I'm kind of biased in that sense. I haven't spent any time with a lot of this panel before, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity. So Paxty, he had this great question of, what are we trying to do, right? And he just spoke to that again. What are we trying to do? Well, when you're an elected official and you go into the kitchen, if you will, the policy arena where the sausage is made, what you quickly discover is, well, how do you define we? Because there's a lot of people in the room and they don't agree on the facts of the situation. In fact, they'll discount facts out of hand if it comes from the wrong source, not their channel, not their periodical. Many people won't take the time to read the science, so translation is really important. But so they don't agree on the facts of the situation, so how do they agree on the problem? They don't. And if they don't agree on the problem, if they don't agree on the facts of the problem, then how do they agree on the solution? And so this gets progressively worse the more difficult the problem is. So for here locally, I think most everyone on this panel appreciates Lake Okeechobee and comprehensive Everglades restoration. Look at the all-out brawl and different sides to that policy debate over what the solution is for Lake Okeechobee and storing water and how high the lake should be and who's the cause of the problem and what's the solution. Is the solution to actually have standards that are enforced with agriculture, or is it the coastal elite and all their septic tanks that's causing the problem? So as a pragmatist and someone who understands science, I say it's everyone's problem. Mm-hmm. And so when you can't agree on the big freaking solutions, and Paxty, when you can't just get all the heavy equipment out there and you can't get people behind the $20 billion plan that should have been done 10 years ago, then you just got to go to your list. This is what I keep hanging on my wall, and you can't see it, but it's H2O quality. And then every time I hear a good idea on water quality, I write it down. And of course, septic sewer is on there. Of course, Donaldson's baffle boxes are on there. Rain garden swales, new sections for ditches, fertilizer herbicide rules, storage, treatment, living shorelines, increase online retention and treatment. Susan, you want to freak out a state legislator who may be a proponent of development? Tell them that you need more on-site storage with every development. Tell them that the South Florida Water Management District, instead of requiring that you store the first 2 inches, tell them it should really be 4 inches based on you want to freak someone out, start talking like that, because that impacts the bottom line and the ability to develop. So as a pragmatist, someone who Paxty's alluding to, someone who's not going to serve forever because it's a heavy lift, and I believe in term limits, what can you get people to buy into? What can you get them to do? So sometimes when you can't do the 2,000-acre storage and treatment project, how about trees? Can you get them to plant trees? Because one tree takes 2 inches of water in the leaves, takes it up through the roots, and it never turns into sheet flow that picks up contaminants that go into the ditch, that goes into the lake, that goes into the river, that goes in the estuary. How do you get it? And then you got to have these teaching moments, and that's why this is great. I'm grateful for king tides. I'm grateful that there is video that shows people's streets and homes being flooded with seawater. I mean, I don't want that to happen, but the reality is it's in your face. You can't deny it. You can deny science you don't understand. We don't think you should, but people do it. It's kind of hard to deny that, hey, you know what? This king tide never came up here for 100 years, and now it does. So I think you got to take advantage of those teaching opportunities. You have to work hard, smart, and together. And so anytime that you have that event where you can get people on the same page to embrace the problem, that's when you kind of have to make it happen. And then, by the way, SELF is amazing. And as far as I know, SELF is the only nonprofit property assessed clean energy program. We have a great executive director, and the low-hanging fruit, same thing applies to SELF and PACE. So it's expensive to put up solar panels. It can be expensive to put in a solar water heater. One of the best improvements you can do on your house is just to weatherize it. Fastest payback. If you would just replace, the gaskets on your windows and your doors and make sure your house is sealed, you get a payback in 2 years. And it's much cheaper. It's much more accessible. You get more bang for your buck. And that's what we need to do until we get people to coalesce behind the bigger solutions, the more ambitious ones.
That's right. So just get started. So
continuous improvement beats delayed perfection, according to Mark Twain. I think he was right.
Yeah, Susan, one more thing what the mayor said, which is super important. Part of what's happening, especially in the world now with the polarization, the political if people could put the guns at the door, and water knows no boundaries. The other thing the mayor said, and Don brought it up, the one thing about water, it's unifying. So it doesn't know to stop county by county. It's in everybody's best interest. Put the guns at the door, sit down and say, whether you believe in sea level rise or climate change, put all the words away. Water is a challenge. Do we all agree there? And what is the challenge? We have property value. We have a quality of life. We have a tourism-based economy that doesn't like to see this on the, if I'm someplace and deciding if I'm going to Cayman Islands or some other place or South Florida, I'd like the South Florida to be recognized as a showcase, resilience, innovation. Those guys are getting it right. Hey, we've got to go to Florida to learn how to do it. And wouldn't it be cool if people from around the world came to Florida to see how we got it right? Because we don't have a choice. So to the mayor's point, wouldn't it be cool, and this is kind of our private conversation when we've done these events, listen guys, we understand there's differences of opinion. Let's agree on one thing. Water is a challenge, and we're all going to benefit from working together. Put your guns at the door, differences at the door, let's find commonality. And so when Don, you were showing those maps and the counties and that little red line, water doesn't see the red line, right, my brother? It goes everywhere. So to the mayor's point, yes, we have to agree there. Whatever that problem is, we're on the same team, working as a state and a community and a tribe for one cool thing, which is a great Florida to be a showcase for the world for other people to learn from. So thank you, Mayor, for bringing that up.
Yeah. Florida is such a special place, and I think people who live here sort of are they understand our natural environment as part and parcel of who we are as Floridians. So Jeff, sort of the last word before we go to audience questions, and if you're not covering the weather, extreme weather, you're out teaching people about climate and carbon, what would you say is the sort of single most important thing that individuals can do to sort of move this conversation along so that we do ultimately take the steps to avoid the worst impacts of climate?
Well, it's not really easy for individuals to do that much because, this is such a systemic issue. It's kind of the way that society is formed in our big industries and our governments. But I think actually, maybe it's understated a little bit, the understanding that if you change your light bulb, it's not really going to do anything. It's true. However, if you change your light bulb or you change your car over to a hybrid or, an electric car, or you put solar panels on your roof, your neighbors will see it. And believe me, one of them or two of them will put solar panels on their roofs or will drive a hybrid car and then their neighbors will see them. And so the point is, it's grassroots. So I always, when I talk about climate change and people ask me about personal solutions, I say, don't think about, because it's easy for everybody to say, well, what's the difference if I stop eating hamburgers? That's not going to do anything. It's not, but if your kids influence their friends and their friends, all these things will eventually matter. It's kind of like the pet rock. I don't know how that became a thing way back when, but it did. And that's what we need to make climate change. Although pet rock only lasted a year or two, we need to make climate change enduring, decades and decades, right? Because we're going to be fighting this for a long time. So I would say, in all honesty, the answer is let your voices be heard with both your votes and your wallet. That is by far the number one way that we cause change. It can be done. Oh, and the other thing is, I'll mention this. Economically speaking, I believe this. This is not me just throwing a line to everybody who's watching this. You know, climate change is really an opportunity. It really is. I don't think about it as a problem anymore. I used to think about it as a problem, but it's not a problem as much as it's an opportunity to make a better life, to re-engineer the way we do things so that our children and our grandchildren have better lives. And I say that knowing that wind technician is the #1 fastest growing job in this country right now. Solar panel technician is the #3 fastest growing occupation in this country right now. And it's happening in the middle of America where there's a lot of pushback against climate change, yet it's these communities that will benefit the most economically from combating climate change. So this is an opportunity for the United States to reinvent the Industrial Revolution, but as a green revolution. It's happening already. Regardless if anybody wants it to come or not, it's cheaper now, and it's going to be much cheaper very soon for renewable energy. So the bottom line is this is an economic revival for the United States. If we just accept it and run with it and stop battling it and fighting it, because it's coming no matter what, we might as well go with the flow, ride the wave, as you Floridians like to say. I don't surf, but if we surf the wave, it's going to be a lot easier than kind of swimming upstream, if you will. Not that we have that many streams in Florida.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that want to have choice in how they power their lives and appreciate the ability to save money. Right now, an electric vehicle over the life cycle is cheaper than owning an internal combustion engine.
What about the TV? I have this big TV because I do weather from my apartment now for hopefully not much longer.
Yeah.
And it was $6,000 10 years ago. Now it's $600. The point is that if gas and solar and wind are at parity right now, so they're equal in price, in a matter of 2 years, in a matter of 10 years, it's going to be a lot cheaper. So there's so many economic advantages to just making this transition, and the fact that we're fighting it is just a waste of our time and energy.
No, that's absolutely right. In Florida, we send $57 billion a year out of state to bring in fossil fuel from somewhere else. So if we keep those energy dollars working here at home, we can keep people working and keeping, that economic development. So I'm going to turn it over to Beth, who's got some questions from the audience. So over to you.
Yes, Susan, thank you. I see we have 2 questions right now. So I know we're a little over time, but hopefully we'll have a chance to answer just those 2. And neither of them are directed at a particular person. So feel free to chime in, or Susan, you could direct the question. I'm going to start with the one with a more clear answer. What are the main causes of red tide? Are they related to sewage spills?
Well, how about Mayor? Why don't we send that over to you? The scientific causes of red tide or green algae.
I would defer that one because on the East Coast here, we got more brown and green, and the dinoflagellate that causes red tide is, as you know, being from the West Coast of Florida, is naturally occurring, has been there for a long time. And of course, the speculation and the subject of intense study, I think there was just a grant announced last week about studying the sources and the reason for it. But a lot of us suspect that it's the additional nutrients being put into the water by runoff. And runoff is one of those huge non-point sources of pollution, because all of that rainwater is going over agricultural lands and then also our beautiful green lawns here in Florida. And it's also getting impacted on the West Coast, especially by older utilities that are putting effluent, again, sewage water, dumping it into Tampa Bay, other places. So you get all these sources of nutrients, and we're really talking about nitrogen and phosphorus here. And it goes into the water and it feeds the microscopic plants and the algae, the dinoflagellates. So that's red tide is caused by dinoflagellate. And our speculation is it's the nutrients and then the warmth. Right? So, hey, what does it take to make a tiny little microscopic organism like this happy? Or what does it take to make algae happy? Well, you want warmth, sunlight, and nutrients, right? Then it's a happy little microorganism, and it goes forth and it multiplies. And unfortunately, the dinoflagellate is toxic, and it kills kind of everything in its path and creates a dead zone. And once it becomes airborne, can be toxic to sensitive people. So I know that you wanted to talk about this. I know you're the moderator, Susan, but I know you wanted to hit this one. But nutrients and warmth are the culprits.
And I should
Is
say,
Don?
tropical water temperatures have gone up 2 degrees since 1900. Tropical
right.
water temperatures in the Atlantic, 2 degrees since 1900. That's a lot. That means you hit a threshold with not only coral, with red tide, and you also hit a threshold with hurricanes, all of them.
That's right.
So I know we've focused a lot here on the East Coast with the blue-green algae, which blooms and has had natural occurrences within the lake. And I kind of go back to what the mayor said earlier and others, that it's really from all places. The nutrient, it's ultimately too many nutrients, too much nitrogen, phosphorus in the water. And some scientists look at the ratios between the two on what can spur certain things. But I know for our situation, when this blue-green algae comes in down the canal, and then it hits our estuary, which has plenty of nutrients, it blooms even bigger and blows up. But we have found that it does have a cyst that develops that can sink and presumably rebloom again. And we've done some soil samples to show that our results so far is that the blue-green algae is not blooming naturally in the St. Lucie Estuary. It's only coming from the lake, which is, what we suspected. So it's a complicated, organism specific, but in the end, I would say that if our estuary was more in balance, it probably wouldn't take off and bloom as radically when it gets here, or not bloom at all. And of course, the Lake Okeechobee, unfortunately, has way too many nutrients and legacy nutrients that we talk about. So I think septic tanks, it's really everything. It's our lawns, it's our agriculture, it's our septic tanks. We all contribute to the pollution. And I think the mayor pointed it out. It's really, we're doing projects of opportunity to plug everyone we can find.
Complex problems that have a lot of factors, which is what you just laid out, are difficult to sort of take on because of the multi-factors. But Jeff, your comment about the warmer water and what I try to share with people a lot is the warmer, wetter weather makes it worse. So that heavy precipitation is bringing all those nutrients in. So it's a combination of things, but the impacts of climate are shooting it through the roof. So,
but I am optimistic that we can that we are doing projects on all scales. Everglades restoration, this big stormwater treatment projects that the counties and the cities are doing, and then down to the septic and sewer. And then ultimately how we're dealing with our yards and neighborhoods and fertilizers. It's all can come together and it can work. It is achievable for us to make a significant difference.
Beth, one more question?
Yep, we have one more question that's more of a policy question, kind of talking about how you finance some of these projects. Someone asked, could some form of tourism tax provide a funding source to help solve some of the problems like septic tanks affecting coastal communities?
That's one. Patchy and the mayor, maybe you guys want to take that one on?
I will say, because it would be great to have the mayor do the icing on the cake. In Monroe County, I'm actually down in Key Largo right now doing our virtual field trips for the kids underwater. The bed tax here, Mayor, the TDC, Tourist Development Council, and the 5 districts and the bed tax. Obviously, a lot of these communities are challenged enough, whatever it sounds like. In even Broward, we try to do that penny tax and I don't know the mechanics of all this, but it sounds like insignificance just to add a little penny here, a penny there, but it's complicated, Mayor, right? But the idea of having everybody do a little heavy lifting here, so there's a blend and try to tie that into something. So a little bit is tourism based, a little bit is kind of the private sector coming in with P3s that can really move the needle. But to your point, Mayor, is the tourism piece, because then we have obviously impact the attractiveness of our destination, the more we start pumping that with a bed tax or other things for competing with other competitive locations. So I guess to the mayor's point, why don't you chime in on this one?
Tactically, absolutely, there's a connection there. We can see it. And you would just need the state legislature to clarify that the local option or the tourism development tax, the sales tax essentially, could be used for those types of projects. And a penny, Patchy, goes a long way, as you know. So here in St. Lucie County and in the city, just 2 years ago, we had a voter referendum on a 1/2 cent sales tax. 1/2 cent, not even 1 penny, a 1/2 of a penny. Cut a penny in half. And it's going to fund over $100 million of infrastructure over the next 10-year period. But so on one hand, that's reason to be happy and optimistic. But on the other, let me also just be brutally honest. When we were doing our focus groups with our residents on what they would support that tax for, because you got to get voter approval. It's not just like you can go with your 5 friends, Susan, Don, Jeff Paxty, and Beth, and like, oh yeah, this is the group. This is who's voting on the tax. So we all see this. We get it so clear. So in the city, when we tested projects, our residents preferred roads, sidewalks over stormwater, over river projects. So here, even though we have citizens who have funded a stormwater utility, have funded a water and wastewater utility, and these monumental retrofits, in the situation of 2 years ago, they were more comfortable spending that money on roads and sidewalks than pure stormwater projects. Now, are we putting in the largest baffle boxes you could imagine? Are we doing first-class stormwater projects? We are. But I go to your tagline, and back to Susan's question of how we do this. Was it engage, educate, and inspire? Was that your foundation's motto? That's what we need to do. We need to bring in Jeff's grassroots, because it's not just about voting, all right? Because until the environment becomes the #1 issue, and until people understand negative externalities, they're going to vote over their tribe. They're going to vote over just the pure economy without understanding how all this is tied in. We have a lot of engagement education to do before we can get there. But yes, from a policy standpoint, you could use tourist development tax in Florida. We would need the legislature just to clarify that that's a permissible use. And you absolutely can do local sales tax projects. You can identify stormwater utilities. There are funding sources. What you need is the political will to do it. You need people to be willing to pay out of their pocket. And for Don, they need to spend $12,000, and PSL, they need to spend $6,000. They need to be willing to kind of put their pocketbook where their mouth is. And I know that we talked behind the scenes about being optimistic, Susan, and we want to, and Don hit it really well with projects of opportunity. I want to compliment our current legislature and our, the governor's office on water issues, because in a previous administration, they couldn't even use words like resiliency and sea level rise. Like that was forbidden. You couldn't even do it. Last year, before COVID, remember before COVID, the state legislature put historic amount of money towards water. And I think to Jeff, Don, and Paxty's point, you work on what you can work, projects of opportunity at all scales, as Don said. And then when the stars align, you swing for the fences. So to use a baseball analogy, you can win a game just hitting singles. So hit singles, and then when the pitch comes in, you can hit a grand slam and hit it out of the park with the comprehensive Everglades restoration plan, or statewide sewer, septic to sewer conversion, or best practices on ag. Then you swing for the fences. That's how you have to do it. But make sure you're doing something. Like, don't waste the time, even if it's small scale, grassroots, working with Jeff to change out your bulbs to LED is better than doing nothing. You can wait forever, or you can do something now. Just keep doing something now. Even if you think it's small, do something.
So I know we've got to wrap it up, so we'll sort of go around the circle one more time, and if you've got a couple words of wisdom, but on the notion of, this incredible challenge that we're talking about this afternoon with water pollution and climate. F. Scott Fitzgerald said that the sign of first-rate intelligence is when you can hold 2 opposing ideas in your mind at one time and still retain the ability to function. So I've always felt like someone who wakes up every day and have for the last 2 decades very concerned about the buildup of greenhouse gas emission and what that means to our climate. But at the same time, as was said here, you know, we have the solutions. We know how to make, you know, our cars can be electric, and we can put solar. I have solar on my roof. I have an electric vehicle. And so we can do it, to your point, Don, right? So, but we just got to get started now. So one quick round of sort of goodbyes, and we'll just go as we started before. We'll start with Jeff, and then we'll go to the mayor, and we'll just do real quick because we're running out of time.
Yeah, sure. You know, thank you for having me. I would just leave you with this. Just look at climate change as an opportunity for a better life for your children and your grandchildren. Susan, you're muted.
There, Mayor, you want to just a couple words of wisdom, and we're going to get going.
Yes, continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. How can you help make the world a better place? And if you don't have the answer to that, just start with Paxti's Foundation's motto of engage, educate, and inspire.
There you go. Patchy?
Yeah, and to that, thank you, FAIR, for having us. And to the mayor's point, one of the things that I'm most excited about is great people doing great things right now. And I'll tell you, Dr. Guy Harvey, who I'm a huge fan and honored to be part of this new team, Ron Bergeron, Alligator Ron, what's going on with these leaders now, Dr. Guy Harvey, Oceans, Everglades, Alligator Ron, these two guys are getting together about working from sawgrass to seagrass and how we make one unified tribe, everybody talking together, working together. There's really great stuff going on in Florida. We all should be proud to be part of it. So, Mayor, can you just hold up your Guy Harvey glass so I can take a quick frame grab and send it to Dr. Harvey and the Caymans?
Oh, Paxti, this is from the city's commission painting. We commissioned Guy Harvey to do a city portrait back in the day. And it has all of the marine life from the St. Lucie River in it. And then we take elements out, and it's part of our public art program. So we just built this crosstown bridge, $300 million bridge project. We put some of Guy Harvey's pieces into the pedestals, into the mosaic of the bridge. So this is a living part of PSL.
So that to me, the fabric, and I'll end this, is as Floridians, we're all here for a reason. We're so passionate about the beauty of our state. The diversity, the aquatic diversity is just unparalleled anywhere in the world. And so it's wonderful to see communities like that embraced through the arts and through our unified love of something that we care about. And thank you, FAIR, for giving us all the opportunity to share this passion together as a team. So go team, go FAIR. Thank you, Susan.
Don, you're
Yes,
last
thank
up.
you. Yes, and Patsy, behind me is a Guy Harvey print, deep purple, by the way. So anyway, you got us all, endorsing Dr. Harvey.
Lean to the side. Let me do a frame grab of that. Just lean to the side.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Okay, those are going to Dr. Harvey now. Thank you. Okay.
So in any event, no, I thought this was a really great discussion, really diverse group that you have here. You know, I think the optimism, I like the mayor pointing out too, and everybody, from the light bulb to how you use your fertilizer in the yard, to supporting your community doing bigger projects. And I also end with the fact that I'm often surprised, we often look for the state and national government for science. I think you'll find that a lot of small communities are engaging professional scientists and doing water quality studies that really are first rate. And so I think you'll find that there's some really innovative partnerships with local government and small folks working with whether it's NOVA or some of the other organizations, Harbor Branch, et cetera, and our own professional scientists really helping us to identify how to spend our money in the most efficient way. Where's the best bang for our buck? Where's our dirty dozen of worst polluted waters in our community, and how do we fix it? So that's why I'm optimistic. It's really from all levels of our community. And thanks for having me.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks everybody for being with us this afternoon. And Beth, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone who took the time to watch this panel. It was such a great conversation and discussion. I'm going to encourage everyone to tune back in tomorrow, where we have two panels. The first one at 1 p.m. called Benefit Cost Analysis, Floodplain and Sea Level Rise. And the speakers on that panel, and to your point, Don, about some of the movements small communities are making, we have the mayor of Monroe County, the mayor of Hoboken, New Jersey, the chief recovery officer of the city of Houston, and the chief resilience officer from Monroe County all speaking. So that should be a really great panel. And then our week is going to be wrapped up at 3 o'clock tomorrow with a bonus panel from NAREP about minorities and home ownership at a disproportionate risk of sea level rise and other catastrophic events. So everyone watching, I encourage you to tune back in tomorrow, and thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.